Hello Fusion fans. What I want to do in this video is show you how to create a new empty Fusion design and start creating geometry. To get started, you obviously have to create your new design. So go to File, New Design, and this will give you an empty Fusion object. From here, let's create some geometry. So we're going to start in the Models workspace. And this creates, in Model you create solid bodies that have flat faces, hard edges, very prismatic shapes. And there's a couple ways to get started. One is to use the simple shapes up here, box, cylinder, sphere. A little bit later we'll see how you can use a sketch and then use things like extrude and sweep to create 3D geometry. So I'll start with a box. Select the face that I want to start on, or work plane. Pick 2 points to define the rectangle, and then you'll see these manipulators here where I can drag to set the size or the height. I also can type values in the dialog. So you'll see this theme throughout Fusion that I can drag with manipulators, type values. Depending on the command and the geometry you're creating, you'll have different manipulators available. So there's my box. To continue with this model, I'm going to keep using these basic shapes. So I'll use cylinder. Just like before, I'll pick a face to start on. You'll see I get a glyph when I hit the midpoint of that line. So I'm going to click to get the midpoint, move the cursor out, and click again to set the diameter of the circle. And there's my manipulator again, so I can drag that to set the size. Because I'm dragging into material, Fusion assumes I want to cut away, but actually I want to join. So I'm going to go to the dialog and select join to add material. All right, so there's our first basic shape. All right, we used a box and a cylinder to create this. If I want to make changes or continue refining, I can use the same create tools, or I can go to modify, and you see I have several commands there to edit geometry. Now what happens if I have something that is not easily defined with cylinders and boxes? What I can do is use sketches. So I can create a 2D sketch and then use tools to turn that into 3D geometry. So I'll start with a circle. Just like before, I'm going to pick the plane that I want to start on. Click for the center of the circle, click again for the diameter. And I'm going to create another circle next to that. So again, click for the center, and this time I'll type in a value for the diameter. And now I'm going to use line to connect these two circles. And that's going to create my 2D profile I need for my model. So I click once, click a second time on the other circle to define the line, and repeat for the lower line. And that's the profile I need. Now I'm going to go in and add some dimensions to lock down the size of this geometry. So I'll pick on the first circle, that's 50 millimeters. This one, because I typed a value, automatically got a dimension. And then if I pick the 2 circles, I get a linear dimension between the center points. And I do this so that it locks down the geometry, but also lets me make changes. So I can change that from 150 to 120. And it looks like I missed a pick when I define that line, so I can just drag that back to my circle. So that's my 2D sketch profile. Now I can use the create commands to turn that into 3D geometry. So I'll use extrude, select the profiles, and you'll see that familiar manipulator, so I can drag that to set the height. And we'll click OK. And there's a second body in our design. All right, so you can see these have and again, if I want to go and make changes, I can use modify. So now I want to create something that's more organic, a lot more curvature to it. So to do that, I'll use the sculpt tools. To get to sculpt, I'll create form. That puts a form object or operation in my timeline, and you can see I'm put into the sculpt workspace. If I go to the create pull down, I've got similar tools to what you saw in model. So I've got simple shapes I can start with, or I have extrude, revolve, and sweep. I'm going to start with a box. Just like before, I'll pick the face to start on, pick to define the size, and right away you see in Sculpt you get much more curved geometry, right? It's more organic. I have the same manipulators you saw before, so I can click and drag the manipulators to set the size. I have some new manipulators here. These control the number of faces. So that controls the shape of the geometry and also how you can modify it when you're in the Sculpt workspace. So I'm going to add some faces here to give me better control. And following the pattern we've seen before, if I want to make changes, I go to the Modify pull-down to get to commands to edit. Let's look at Edit Form. So I can double-click on edges to get the entire ring. Again, you see manipulators that I can drag on. In this case, I'm going to scale and then drag the arrow to translate. Let's double-click to get a different ring and scale that down. And when you're in Sculpt, I also can select faces or vertices. So I'm going to select some faces and edit that. And you start to get the idea that in Sculpt it's much more press-pull and you're going to get curved or organic shapes. When I'm happy with that, I can finish form. That takes me back to the model space where I can do manufacturing operations. So I can use these same modify and create tools to make changes to my Sculpt body just like I did with the solid bodies. And that's a quick introduction to how to start a design using Fusion 360.